Hi, my name is Victoria Shew, and this fall I worked as a technical writer for Mr. Cooper in Dallas. So first of all, what is Mr. Cooper? Formerly called NationStar Mortgage, it's the third largest mortgage lender in the nation and the largest non-bank mortgage company in the nation. So now I'll talk a little bit about my interview process to get this position. The process for getting this position was a little bit different for me because this is my full-time job, but I did intern with Mr. Cooper doing this 2019. Referred to the internship by a former professor and applied through the Mr. Cooper website. From there, I was contacted by the department's vice president to schedule an interview. And in that interview, it was with her and also the internship manager. And I provided samples and then was ultimately accepted to the position. I worked with them for the rest of the spring semester and then interviewed in March of 2019 to apply for a full-time position that was available. And that process was pretty much the same as my internship interview. I applied through the Mr. Cooper website, I interviewed with the same two people, and then a few weeks later I was hired. The only difference with this one was that there were multiple other applicants that I knew about, and since it was for a full-time position, there was just a little bit more consideration that needed to go into it to make sure that whoever was going to be accepted was going to be a good long-term fit for the team and that their long-term goals aligned with the team and kind of what the vice president and the manager were also wanting. And is called the Change Governance Office. We're part of Enterprise Risk Management, also called ERM, which is part of the large Department of Risk and Compliance for Mr. Cooper. We are responsible for creating, updating, retiring, and publishing all documents within the company. And so this department is at a corporate level, so we really are kind of just overseeing everything for the company and making sure that documentation is up to par with what it should be. We work with policies, procedures, and standards. Policies communicate objectives, and they're the least common document type to see getting updates or create news for. We work with procedures, which provide step-by-step instructions, and these are the most common document type that's updated and created. We also work with standards, which outline the rules and requirements or other regulations from investors or other auditors. So what's the purpose of these documents? They provide compliance with investors' regulations and laws. They also provide clear and accurate instructions for employees. They serve as new hire training and refreshers for current employees, and they provide a snapshot to the company, so that way we can see how processes have changed over time or how certain regulations have changed over time, which ultimately kind of leads to a historical snapshot of the mortgage industry in general. So now I'll talk about my job duties and what I worked on during this past semester. My main job is creating and updating documents. This past semester, I've been solely working on what's called the Framework Project, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. And I also occasionally will update documents in our repository system called Archer. I also create process maps, which are visual breakdowns of procedures and processes, and I assign SharePoint requests, which is the main method of how we receive requests to update, create, or retire documents. So these are two of my work products that I created during this past semester. Is the lender paid insurance process map. So this is part of the framework project that I mentioned, and with this, what we are doing is we are combining multiple documents within a department. So for example, this one is for lender paid insurance. We're combined into one, so that way it's a lot easier for the department to review all of their procedures and their standards, and everything is housed in one document rather than just spread over multiple departments and multiple documents. For this specific process process map, I worked with employees and escrow to combine the procedures relating to LPI in one document. We also combined standards into one, but these aren't on the process map since those are just regulations and requirements. It's not part of the actual process. This is what we call a Tier 2 map, which provides a high level of the steps. And we also have a Tier 1 map that I haven't included in this presentation, but it's just an even higher level of the process, and it outlines the different milestones, which I'll explain in the next slide. So this is the lender paid insurance procedure, the process map, but it contains more details on the process map. You'll see that the headings start out with M1 or SM1, and these are the milestones and sub-milestones that came from the Tier 1 map. And these milestones and sub-milestones are basically just the essential stepping stones of the process. It's a way for us to organize all of the information in the content and separate it in chunks that's easier for the reader to understand. So my biggest challenges while working on this project and over the last semester were effectively communicating with SMEs and also deciphering their comments. Sometimes they don't always get back to you super quickly, and sometimes they don't answer your question 100%. So it's kind of a balancing game of trying to figure out how to ask the question appropriately and get the answers that you're needing while also being considerate of their position and their time. Another challenge was deep diving into each department. The framework project is super intensive and requires a lot of knowledge about each department, so trying to learn the process basically inside and out was handling multiple different departments at one time. Another challenge was also handling deadline shifts. Due to COVID and different departments being affected, we had to kind of change around some deadlines, so that was a small challenge to get over and having to adjust all of my work to fit these new deadlines. And lastly, work sent remote has definitely been a challenge. There are a lot of things that I was used to working in office, being able to print, being able to just walk over to someone's desk and ask them a question, and I couldn't do any of those things. So having to learn how to essentially do my job again in a different way was really interesting, but also a challenge. Over this time, I improved my communication skills. I also learned how to work better with a team and with multiple teams, since I'm having to work with multiple teams and people who I never have before. I've also learned how to revise a current style guide. With the framework project, we're really reassessing how we write our documents in general. So it was really interesting and fun to go in and take a look at what we're doing and necessary revisions to better the experience for the reader. I also learned a lot of time and task management skills with this framework project, and then especially with COVID and deadlines changing. It has really taught me how to better manage my time and how to manage it between multiple different tasks. With these deadlines, I would have maybe 3 departments that are due by the end of the month, so I really had to make sure that I was managing my time well to get all of those done within that month. And lastly, I learned that mistakes are okay. I'm definitely still learning a lot about the mortgage industry and have to reach out to multiple people to ask questions or get clarification on something, but I've never felt like I couldn't make a mistake or that I would be punished for making a mistake. The company has been super great about encouraging best and ask for help anywhere and anytime I need it.
I feel like the tech comm courses that I've taken at UNT have really helped me in this position and also just in general as a technical writer. 4250 was probably the biggest help, and I took that as an undergrad, mainly just because it provided exposure to style guides, writing for audiences, and procedural writing. Technical editing has also been super helpful. Combining the documents in the framework project required a lot of determining what information was and wasn't useful, so the skills that I learned in this class helped make those decisions a little bit easier and allowed me to combine the documents cohesively and effectively. It also helped me learn how to spot errors and revise information for concision while keeping the content meaning. And lastly, the Teaching TechCom class helped me learn best practices for teaching others, as well as reviewing others' work. I had many opportunities to teach others how to use certain systems such as Archer and SharePoint. The skills I learned in this class helped me deliver the information better, and they also helped me when reviewing my teammates' work, as I was able to provide feedback in a way that would be more beneficial and encouraging to them. There aren't many experience or to my position in general, but one of them is definitely being able to work in office. The limitations of 100% remote work made it a bit difficult to transition to 100% remote. For example, we weren't allowed to print anymore, and that's something that I really relied on with process maps and document writing, because it made it a lot easier for me to compare and make sure that the information was correct and aligned in both documents. So being able to actually work in office, even if just a couple of days, I think would definitely have made this past semester a little bit smoother and just a little bit easier to handle. The framework department also relies on a lot of team collaboration, which we definitely have taken care of with things such as Skype, Zoom, and Microsoft Teams, but it's not always the same environment and the same experience as whenever we're in person and able to easily share documents and not have any technical issues, and just kind of the office environment in general, I think, makes collaboration a little bit easier. In addition, working 100% from home, definitely typical work days, so that was a little bit of a hurdle to get over and something that I think took a little bit of time for me to adjust to, but overall it hasn't been terrible, and it's just a small minor change that I would make. So to close, I'm extremely happy with my experience. I experience in the technical writing field and more knowledge of just technical writing in general. And I'm also extremely happy with the company that I work for and the position that I have. It's a great place to work. I'm always encouraged to do my best, and reasonable setbacks are always understood. My team really feels like a family, even from a distance.
Hi, my name is Victoria Shew, and this fall I work